Hare Krishna. Bhubaneswar is known worldwide as the city of temples. It is said to have over 1 crore Shiva Linga and more than 1000 ancient temples. Among the famous temples in Bhubaneswar is the Sri Krishna Balaram temple managed by ISKCON. However, among the disciples of Srila Gour Govinda Swami Maharaj, this temple is famously known as the Crying School. Srila Gurudev often said, "I have opened a crying school here in Bhubaneswar. Unless you cry for Krishna, you cannot attain him." In this episode, we will attempt to understand some pastimes and teachings related to Srila Gurudev's crying school. Srila Gurudev always emphasized crying for Krishna as the way to attain him, and it was to teach this practice of crying that he established this school. Gurudev frequently stated that the path of devotion is the path of separation, the path of viraha, as taught by Mahaprabhu. We as living beings are parts of Lord Krishna, but have forgotten him for eternity and are suffering in this material world under Maya's influence. Therefore, we must cry for Lord Krishna in separation. Gurudev emphasized that the chanting of the Maha Mantra should be done in this mode. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. This is the crying of the soul. Lord Krishna himself, in the form of Mahaprabhu, demonstrated through his life how to cry for Krishna in separation. This sentiment is the essence of our Acharyas. This is the sentiment of the Gaudiya Vaishnavas. Gurudev expressed this mood when he said, "I have opened a crying school here in Bhubaneswar. To attain Krishna, you must cry for him." Roaring like a lion, Gurudev declared, "Everyone is crying for their family, friends, wealth, and so on. But here we must cry for Krishna. Without crying, no one has ever attained Krishna, not even the Gopis. Srimati Radharani also cried for Krishna. Even Lord Krishna himself, when he came as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, cried continuously for 18 years in Gambhira at Jagannath Puri. If they cried, how can we think that we will attain Krishna without crying? We must cry too." Now question arises, what does actually crying mean? Once a disciple asked, "Gurudev, you tell us to cry, but the scriptures say that one should not shed tears in front of the Lord. How do we reconcile this?" Gurudev replied, "Arey Baba, crying does not mean shedding tears in front of others. It is the anguish of your heart, Hridaya vyatha. Just as we cry and feel immense pain in our hearts when we lose a loved one, a family member, spouse or child, we experience the sorrow of separation. The memories of their presence remain etched in our hearts, and we find ourselves grieving deeply, constantly recalling the bond we shared with them. In the same way, when we lose material wealth, we become consumed by thoughts of how to recover it. Day and night we feel restless, lamenting, "Oh, I have lost so much." Our hearts are heavy with grief over the loss of something material. Similarly, we must cry in our hearts for Krishna and continue to cry until we attain him. If this is crying, then how can we cry for Krishna? We only know crying for Maya, not for Krishna. Gurudev had replied this very simple yet important questions of the devotees through one of his pastimes which we are presenting here. Srila Gurudev's disciple Sripad Leelavatar Prabhu from America shared his experience. In 1993, full with enthusiasm, I travelled from America to Bhubaneswar to meet Gurudev. I was very happy and enthusiastic now that I will daily hear Srimad Bhagavatam from the lotus mouth of Srila Gurudev. However, upon arrival, I learned that Gurudev is travelling to Africa for preaching. He was going to Africa for the first time. Heartbroken, I prayed daily for Gurudev's safe return. A few weeks later, Gurudev returned. The devotees of ISKCON Bhubaneswar used to welcome Srila Gurudev whenever he returns from his tour with grand kirtan procession from the airport to the temple. This time, Lilavatar Prabhu was a part of this grand welcome ceremony. After returning, Gurudev narrated stories from his Africa tour. But before his arrival lecture, his assistant, His Grace Janeshwar Prabhu, who is from England and travelled with Srila Gurudev as his personal servant, shared briefly about Gurudev's Africa tour. He explained how the African devotees are enlightened by Srila Gurudev and how Srila Gurudev cleared all the doubts of the devotees there. He said how Gurudev had spoken about crying for Krishna during a Bhagavatam discourse there. During the discourse, a young African devotee asked Gurudev, "Maharaj, we understand we must cry for Krishna, but we don't have that heart to love Krishna. Our hearts are hard like stone. They are filled with material desires, doubts, anger and greed. These enemies have occupied our hearts and made it as hard as a block of stone. How can we cry for Krishna with such hearts?" Srila Gurudev expressed happiness towards that devotee's curiosity and enthusiasm and replied with a beautiful example. When you visit someone's home where there has been a death, you may not have any personal relationship with the deceased. Yet, as you enter, you will see many people crying, those who were closely connected to the departed soul. They are grieving because the deceased was someone's son, someone's brother, someone's husband, or someone's father. Even though you may not have had a relationship with that person, when you witness their loved ones crying, your heart will naturally soften. You will find yourself overwhelmed with emotion, and tears will begin to flow from your eyes. When you spend time among those grieving, their pain seems to transfer to you. The atmosphere itself is filled with sorrow. No one is happy. Everyone is distressed and heartbroken. Gradually, your mind and emotions align with the collective grief, and you too begin to feel their pain and cry. It happens naturally, without effort or practice. Grief becomes contagious in such an environment. In the same way, if you associate with a pure devotee, a true Vaishnava, who is constantly crying out in longing for Krishna, their devotion will begin to affect you. A sadhu who earns wholeheartedly to serve and please Krishna, who works tirelessly without caring for their own happiness, carries a deep, unshakable love for Krishna. When you spend time with such a person, their intense feelings and devotion will resonate within you. This is the power of association, known as sadhu sangha or satsanga. Without the influence of such saintly association, there is no other way to develop longing for Krishna. Devotion and longing for Krishna will naturally awaken in your heart when you are in the presence of a true sadhu. At that moment, when Gurudev explaining all this, Sripad Lilavatar Prabhu's heart became filled with joy. He realized the profound purpose of his journey to Bhubaneswar to receive the precious gift of sadhu sangha. The example shared by Srila Gurudev resonated deeply within him and reminded him of an incident that had occurred just a few days earlier. While Gurudev was in Africa, one of his female disciples from Odisha, Sunanda Devi Dasi, had left her body at her home in Bhubaneswar. Before her funeral, devotees organized a kirtan at her residence, and Lilavatar Prabhu was invited to join the kirtan. When he reached her home, Lilavatar Prabhu found Sunanda Devi Dasi's body resting in one of the rooms. Her family members were gathered around her, weeping profusely. Lilavatar Prabhu, along with the other devotees, began kirtan in a corner of the room. The kirtan continued for a long time, and gradually the family members left the room, leaving only Lilavatar Prabhu and another devotee with the departed body. Lilavatar Prabhu shared, "I wasn't closely acquainted with my god sister, whose body lay in front of me. But as I witnessed her family members crying and calling out her name with deep sorrow, my eyes filled with tears. Though I tried to hold them back, I couldn't stop them from flowing." After some time, an auto rickshaw stopped in front of the house. A woman stepped out, weeping uncontrollably, and ran into the room. Overwhelmed with grief, she clung to Sunanda Devi Das's body and cried aloud. The entire family gathered, and the atmosphere was soon filled with loud cries and lamentation. The woman was her elder sister, and seeing her immense sorrow, Lilavatar Prabhu could no longer contain his emotions. He joined his god brothers and began crying along with the family. Later, the devotees and family members carried Sunanda Devi Das's body to Swargadwar in Jagannath Puri. The Swargadwar at Puri is considered as sacred as the Dasashwamedha Ghat in Varanasi. It is believed that those cremated at Swargadwara attain the eternal abode of Vaikuntha. Amidst heartfelt kirtan, her body was given the final fire, completing the rites. After the cremation, everyone returned to the temple, carrying with them the solemn experience of witnessing devotion and loss united in the presence of Krishna's grace. The answer given by Srila Gurudev on how we can cry for Krishna deeply impacted Sripad Lilavatar Prabhu. Having practically experienced what Gurudev was teaching, he felt immense joy and gratitude. After listening to Gurudev, Lilavatar Prabhu realized that to truly cry for Krishna, one must associate with a sadhu who is always crying for Krishna. Lilavatar Prabhu reflected, "This is just a glimpse of the vast ocean of Srila Gurudev's mercy." Srila Gurudev teaches his disciples not merely through theoretical knowledge, but by encouraging practical experiences. He emphasizes the importance of sadhu sangha, association with saintly devotees, but clarifies that such a sadhu must be one whose heart constantly cries for Krishna. Only through the mercy of such a sadhu can the emotions of longing and devotion transfer from their heart to ours. This divine bhava cannot be cultivated by personal effort alone. It requires the association of a true sadhu. Srila Gurudev often reminds us that our bhajan and kirtan should be performed in the mood of separation. True bhajan arises from feeling intense separation from our beloved Lord Sri Krishna. This is the soul's natural cry, a heartfelt prayer to the divine couple Sri Radha and Krishna to bestow their mercy and grant us the service of their lotus feet. The Hare Krishna Mahamantra is not of this material world. It is the Premadhana, the divine treasure of Goloka Vrindavana. Mahaprabhu brought this sacred wealth to uplift the fallen souls of this material world. In Goloka Vrindavana, this Mahamantra is constantly chanted by the Gopis and Srimati Radharani herself, who sing it in the mood of separation. As devotees, we must also chant the Lord's holy names with the same mood of separation, Viraha Bhav. When we chant in this way, crying out for Krishna from the depth of our hearts, we can hope to attain Him. Srila Gurudev has established this Krandan Vidyalaya, the crying school, to teach us how to cry for Krishna. In this school, Gurudev imparts the wisdom and practice needed to awaken this mood of divine longing. In the next chapter of this crying school, we will share another profound and inspiring pastime of Srila Gurudev, which will surely help devotees cultivate the mood of crying for Krishna and bring them closer to the divine service of the Lord. Hare Krishna.